firstly, how did the vision refresh and the statements that were chosen actually come about?
When I arrived in the diocese, which is about 2 years ago now, one of the first tasks on my plate, if you like, as a new bishop, was to think about the vision and the strategy of the whole ecumenical county. And so I was tasked with either doing a new strategy or refreshing the current strategy. Well, we figured that God for All still had quite a few years left to go in it, but it needed a bit of refreshing. So what we did was set up a way of consulting with everybody across the county. So people might remember that there were online questionnaires, you could fill them in on paper. Various churches talked about, we need everybody to contribute their voices to this process. So we reckon about 2,000, maybe more than 2,000 people responding to that survey. And we simply asked, what are the priorities? What do you want to see happening in this county in the coming years? So we asked various groups, young people, Network Youth Church, schools, had a slightly different version of it with some slightly more child-friendly language in. And we just canvassed everybody and said, well, tell us about what you think you would like to see. And it was out of that process, really, that the 4 themes, follow daily, speak boldly, care deeply, tread gently, emerged. Those were the things that rose to the top of people's priorities. So it was great, really. It was a real bottom-up process of deciding, I think probably I went into a dark room at some point. I think it was about Easter last year, and thought, okay, we've got all of this stuff. How do we distill it into some simple words that people can remember? And it was out of that the 8 words came. But that's the distillation of a lot of everybody's thoughts.
So what do you think this will mean for the mission of the church?
Well, I hope it will just help us to refocus really on what we do as a church. I mean, in a way, there's nothing new in this. In a way, we're simply restating what we're all about as a church. We're a church of disciples who follow Jesus daily. And the word daily is quite important because that's about, it's not just about Sundays. That's about who we are wherever we go in the week. We need to speak boldly. We need to speak about our faith. We need to speak out as Christians. We need to care deeply. And, I'm not telling anybody anything new than what they already do in that. I see people caring deeply in our churches and in the communities. And we need to tread gently on this beautiful earth that God has given us. So these are the things that the church has been doing for thousands and thousands of years. But for us in Cumbria now, this is just a reminder, kind of note to self. This is what we're going to be doing over the next 5 or so years. This is what we're going to be focusing on. So I hope it'll give people something that's easy to remember, something they can talk to their friends and neighbours about, something that just helps them to think, okay, how do I do this today? How do I follow daily? What does God want me to speak boldly about today? So my ultimate hope is that as we live this out, and as everybody does this, this is not something that bishops only do, or this is not something that the cathedral only does, or that the various synods and structures do. This is about all of us, every single Christian in Cumbria. And if we all did this, if we truly did this, if I truly did this, I think our lives and our church would be transformed. I think our churches would grow. I think people would grow in their knowledge of God, their discipleship. I think we change society actually for the better. So that's my kind of grand hope, but we begin one day at a time.
And we're going to sort of develop those themes, aren't we? We're going to look at those themes over the next few weeks and put a bit of meat on the bones with them. Which Bible passage have you chosen to sort of start all this off in the reflections through the Lent resources?
Well, really happily, we're going to be basing the Lent resources each week on the Church of England lectionary, actually, for those weeks. And just beautifully, the themes for each week fit beautifully with what the church says the Bible passage should be. So this Sunday, introducing the themes, it's all about the temptation of Christ. It's about when Jesus went into the wilderness and was tempted by the devil. And you might think, well, that's a bit odd thing. That's a bit of an odd verse an odd passage to choose. Why didn't you choose something sunny and happy, or one of the Psalms or something like that, the temptation of Christ? But I think actually as we enter into Lent, all of this we're going to be focusing through Lent. That is a period of refocusing. That's a period of turning back to God. And when Jesus went into the wilderness, he was alone. I mean, it says in Mark's gospel that he was with the wild beasts and the angels were with him. You know, it's quite a sort of desolate place, but it was in that place that Jesus was tempted by the devil and chose his mission, you know, chose to not follow fame or not follow his own priorities, but to follow the priorities of his Father in heaven. And it was after his temptation in the wilderness that he came out and began preaching about the kingdom of God and living that out. So that's the verse for this week. You know, what's our wilderness? Where do we need to go and be alone with God and refocus for the task that he's given us?
And how do you hope people will use these Lent resources each week?
Well, I really hope that people can use them in many different ways. I hope people can listen to our chats every Sunday morning on each of the 4 themes and listen again to that afterwards. There's a whole load of Lent resources on the God for All website. And my hope is it's something that people can engage with individually if they want to. So you could just download them and reflect on them for yourselves, or as groups. That's even better. If you've got a Lent course or a Lent group, a small group, the aim is that the materials are easily usable. And then in our Sunday worship as well, I know of many churches that are going to be using Lent to focus on the refreshed vision, preaching sermons on them, praying around it, you know, focusing together as a church on those. So all sorts of different ways, hopefully, that people can use the material. There's a hymn, actually, a really exciting news is that the Cathedral chapter has written some words to a hymn based on the refreshed vision, and people can download that from the God for All website as well. There's some popular tunes that you can sing it to. So, you know, we can even sing our refreshed vision this Lent.